Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone, depending on what it is that you're tuning in from today. Welcome. My name is Maria Angeli Marval, and I'm so excited for today's Stage32 webinar, How to Build Your Portfolio as a Writer to Get Noticed by Reps. Here's the secret no one in Hollywood will tell you it's not enough to have a great script. You also need to know how to sell yourself to the industry. But getting out there isn't always as easy as it sounds. So this exclusive Stage 32 webinar will focus on 8 simple but often overlooked insider tips to ensure you have what you need to successfully launch your career as a writer. Guiding you through this is Kelly Edwards, veteran producer and creative executive who has worked with every major studio and is responsible for the success of Living Single, Girlfriends, Clueless, Malcolm in the Middle, among others. Kelly has been a Sundance Episodic Lab Fellow and a writer on Our Kind of People. Her new book, The Executive Chair, A Writer's Guide to TV Series Development, is a bestseller and is currently available in stores and online. Before we get started, I just want to go over a few things with you all. First, this is a live and interactive webinar. So what that means is that you can ask questions at any time on the question box, and we will go over them during the Q&A session at the very end. So I'll walk you through how to do that right now. What I want you to do now is to take a look at the control panel that is up on your screen and locate the blue bar that says questions. Pop out that box and you'll see what looks like a chat box where you will be able to type in your questions. So let's go ahead and give this a try right now. Interesting to find out where all of you are from. So what I want you to do right now is to type in what city or what country you are from in that question box so I can make sure you all know how to use it. And while you do that, I wanted to remind you that we love to be social at Stage 32. So please pay it forward and let us know what you learned today. Tag Stage 32 on Twitter and Instagram. We would love to see your post. Okay, great. So it looks like we have people from Los Angeles, Atlanta, amazing, New York, Philadelphia, great, California, all right, Chicago, oh, Las Vegas, Nevada, amazing. Estonia, all right, international today, I love it. Uh, Said hi from an island called Cyprus. All right, that's so fun. North Carolina in the house as well. Chicago, Florida. Okay, Canada. Amazing, amazing. We are happy to have you all here today. And one last thing before we start. Um, Kelly is going to go over a lot of information today. If you feel like you missed something, don't worry about it because in about 48 hours after this live webinar, you will be able to see an on-demand version of today's webinar. You just have to use your Stage 32 account and you can play this video as many times as you would like for up to a year. So now, without further ado, I'm thrilled to present you Kelly Edwards, hosting today's Stage 32 webinar. Kelly, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Mary Angeli. And I want to thank Stage 32 for allowing us to have this hour together. This has been a fantastic platform. I've been a fan of it for a number of months, and most recently saw the fantastic conversation between RB and Amy Bear about rom-coms. So if you haven't checked out some of the other webinars or classes, please do. It's amazing, amazing content. So what we're going to talk about today is how to build your portfolio as a writer so you can get noticed by reps. And I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit about myself and why you should be listening to me. So let's go for this. This is only about 17 slides, so it's going to go pretty quickly, hopefully, but there's a lot of information packed into this hour, so please make sure that you keep up. Okay, so here's my story. My story is that I've been in this business ever since I got out of college. It's been 30 plus years, and I got into the industry through a series of assistant jobs. I started off working for a manager and then quickly moved into casting, but only for a short amount of time. And then I batted around in some assistant positions between, being an assistant at a movie company called Morgan Creek or at Disney. I also worked for a couple of writers. So I was a writer's assistant for about 1.5 years, and we did a show on CBS called Trial and Error. I don't even know that you can find it anymore, but it was a really great entree into the business, and I learned a lot about production through that job. But then I quickly became a feature executive, and I worked for a woman named Laura Ziskin, who had a deal over at Sony. And from there, I then worked for Gary Marshall, and he had a deal at Disney. I was a TV exec right after that. I sort of moved into television, working at Fox as the manager of comedy development, and worked my way up. And we did a lot of deals looking for talent at the time. We developed quite a few shows. Martin was the first show I worked on as a current exec, and then I was also a development executive for Living Single and the George Carlin Show, Two Guys, Girl, and a Pizza Place, which became Two Guys and a Girl. But I had a lot of a really great I think I was probably there about 5 or 6 years before I moved over to running my own department. And so I had a really great training ground so that when I started as my own VP of development over at UPN, I had a really great background in developing content. From there, I was there at UPN for about 4 years. I developed Girlfriends, The Parkers, Clueless, which I developed at Fox, came over to UPN at the time. We had Moesha on the air at the time. So it was it was a really nice extension of, my being able to create and buy content for a network. But I realized at a certain point that I wanted to roll into being a seller. And so I got an executive producer deal over at Paramount. I partnered with a guy named Jonathan Axelrod, and through there, we sold quite a few shows. One of the shows got on the air at UPN. And after that, I ended up making a very big, hard pivot into working as a corporate diversity executive over at NBC Universal. It was a really wonderful job because it was very large in scope. I got to work with a lot of external companies as opposed to internal companies. And what I found was that I was really close to the HR process. So I got a chance to see how people hired and fired at a major corporation. From there, I ended up going to HBO and creating the Emerging Artists programs. So I spent the last 7 years of my executive career doing that, working for a premium cable network. And then most recently, I transitioned out of there to become a writer for myself. I decided that after all of those years, getting back to my original roots, working as a writer's assistant, I wanted to do that again. And so all of the material that I'd been writing for the last, say, 30 years just on my own for myself, I finally decided that I would start showing people. And so I rolled into a deal with HBO and started to create. I was really fortunate enough to get staffed pretty quickly after I left my executive ranks, and I worked on a show called Our Kind of People, which was on Fox last year. While I was doing all of that, if that wasn't enough, I also authored this book, as you can see right here, called The Executive Chair. And really the reason that I wanted to do that was I wanted to be able to take all of the learnings that I had accumulated over the 30+ years as an executive and put them into one book that would help people who are coming into the business understand a little bit better what the ins and outs are and how to avoid some of the pitfalls. So what we're going to talk about today is a little bit of that. We're going to talk about, some of those sort of cheat sheets qualities that can sort of help you avoid some of the pitfalls of getting into the industry. And as a writer, I've really had a chance to be able to see how important it is for you to brand yourself as a writer and how important it is for you to build a cache of material that's going to help you move your career forward. I think sometimes people feel like, they can write anything and everything, and that may be true, but there are reasons why it's important for you to know who you are so that you can tell other people who you are as a writer and sort of, shortcut some of the ways that you can get sidelined. So let's start in, and I will just sort of give you an overview of what we're going to talk about today. Oh, this is a slide on, these are all the places that I've worked. So I've been around. I've been around this town and worked at every major studio in Hollywood. Okay, so here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to go over your lane and why it's important to pick a lane. There's a very practical reason why you should pick a lane. We're going to talk about your mission statement. And why it's important to really know who you are as a writer. We're going to talk about your arsenal. And what that means is, what kind of scripts and material do you have at your disposal that can help you get a rep, and then not only keep the rep, but also get work in this entertainment industry. And I think you'll be surprised at some of the things that that maybe you don't realize can be helpful, but are. We're going to talk about your personal statement. This is really important. When you're talking about yourself in the marketplace, when you're meeting with a showrunner to get staffed, when you're meeting with an executive, maybe it's a feature film executive or a TV executive, you want to be able to articulate really well who you are and what your story is, because what they're looking for, they're going to be finding in your story. We're going to talk a little bit about busting through roadblocks, and what that means is, are there other ways around the traditional paths to get noticed? So we'll talk through that. We'll also go through competitions and programs. So here's some of the tricks of the trade. I've not only developed a lot of those programs, but also I've had this really great group of people who I've worked with over the past few years who also run programs, and I'll give you some of our tricks of the trade. We'll talk a little bit about taking a great meeting and what that means, and also how to network, which can sometimes be one of those things where people, we all get a little frantic when we have to go out and network, and this is going to be some of the easy ways to make sure that you can, bring your anxiety down to a low roar. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Go to the next slide. Okay, so let's talk about your lane. There's a very, very practical reason why we need you to pick a lane. And I'm sure you've heard that term, and that lane, your lane means, when you are, either a drama writer or a genre writer or a comedy writer, we just need you to essentially brand yourself so that we know as executives, and I'm going to put my executive hat on for a second, we know, so that we know what you want and where you want us to send you as you are trying to move forward your career. Like I said before, you may be able to write everything, rom-coms and historical dramas and sci-fi and horror, but if you tell me that you write everything, I don't really know what to do with you. And the goal for you is to get me to pass your material on to either a showrunner or a director or an executive or someone who's going to help further along your career. But if you give me too many choices, it's like that, a smorgasbord where you just don't know where to start. I will not have an idea of what specifically and who to specifically send to you. So that's why there's a really very particular reason why we need you to pick a lane. This is only for the beginning of your career. As you move forward in your career, you can probably do many things. I think that there are probably some people out there that you've seen some fantastic careers, and some of those people can, switch from drama to comedy to, features to TV very, very easily. But that's when they've already built up a very particular bio for themselves. They've got a particular, level of credits. They've probably made quite a few things, and then they can change it up. But in the beginning, it's really important for you to be able to tell me specifically what kinds of material you would like to create and write. And that should also correspond to what you have in your arsenal, so that when you come in and we have that conversation about, this is what I want to do, I'm very, very clear on, okay, I know where to send you. I can then call one or two people on your behalf, get you some meetings, and push you along your merry way. So be very specific. You probably already have scripts in your you know, in your drawer somewhere, well, I guess on your computer, on your desktop right now, that all are pretty much pretty similar in terms of tone, or pretty similar in terms of, you know, if you're a drama writer, you know, if you're a comedy writer. Within those two, know specifically what you do well. You might be great at character. You might be able to fashion your rhetoric about yourself around that. You might really be somebody who would prefer action. You might be somebody who really might prefer sci-fi, but whatever that is, know who you are, because if you can articulate that to me, then I can help articulate that to someone else. Let's go to the next slide, which is your mission statement. Okay, so now you've picked your lane, let's talk about your mission statement. This is also going to go pretty far into in terms of helping you, again, hone in what your lane is, but also who you are. So all these things is going to be, we're going to talk about your lane, your mission statement, and your arsenal, and your personal narrative as sort of one piece, because they're all sort of intertwined. But your mission statement is going to be something where you are really trying to figure out what your brand is. Now, I'll tell you a little story about myself. So when I came out as a writer, this was at the maybe mid 2020, I was hooked up with a manager who, when we talked, we constantly did not see eye to eye on who I was as a writer. And he was saying, well, you know, you can be whoever you want. And I said, well, I fashioned myself as a comedy writer. All of my material that I have is comedic in tone. And I had at the time, I think, 3 half-hour scripts, and then I had a spec Atlanta script. And he kept sending me, though, he kept sending me all this material that was very dark, brooding, very dramatic, and I'm sure very, you know, sort of lofty dramas. And he said, but take a look at this material. Well, unfortunately, what happened was I did spend time taking a look at that material. And what I found after reading the third, you know, book that was probably 300 pages long, I thought, I'm wasting a lot of my own valuable time because I haven't properly told him who I am as a writer. So we are not seeing eye to eye. I'm spending a lot of time doing work that I probably shouldn't be doing, as opposed to focusing on what I wanted to do, which is let me just go down the comedy route. So when you create a mission statement, it helps to tell who you're talking to, your manager, your prospective agent, you know, your lawyer, the other people who are going to possibly advocate for you, who you are. And so if you can go through a particular process to figure what that is, and there's going to be a worksheet that you can use. The more focused you are on who you want to be as a writer, the less people are going to be able to pull you off course, and the more focused you're going to be. So when you go through this mission statement document, it's just going to be a series of questions. It's going to help you hone in on what do you like, what are you drawn to. Maybe it's thematic, maybe it's genre based, but you will see a theme in the films that you like, the series that you like, the books that you like, the plays that you like. You're going to find that you're constantly drawn to the same kind of material. It doesn't mean that you don't love everything, but there's going to be something in particular. There's a thread or a theme that goes through your work in particular that's going to come out. And once you're able to articulate that, you're going to find that your focus, you come into clear focus. It's also going to help you figure out what your goal is as a writer. So if you go through this worksheet, you should be able to, by the end of it, figure out what kind of material you'd like to write. I also like to put in there, you know, what would you never do? So for me, it's things like Goodfellas. Even though I love Goodfellas, it would never occur to me to write Goodfellas. So if someone came to me and said, hey, I've got this really great thing about mobsters, you know, are you interested? I can really very quickly say, it's probably not for me, it's probably best suited for someone else. Unless you're going to do the comedic take on mobsters, it's probably not for me. So make sure that you figure out not only what you love, but also what you think is probably not in your wheelhouse, because that will help you as well. Okay, let's talk about the 3 scripts that you must have in your arsenal. And then we'll talk about alternative works that you can round out your portfolio with. So you're always going to need a first piece of material. Obviously, that's going to be the thing that you go out to your agency or your management companies or with your lawyer, but you're going to have obviously one fantastic piece of material that, you know, is going to knock everybody's socks off. So that's going to be your introductory piece of work. But you also need very quickly, you should have at the same time, you should have a second piece of work as well. And that piece of work is the confirmation that you are actually serious about being a writer. That second piece has to be just as strong. It may or may not be quite the same, so don't kill yourself, but essentially you do need a second piece of very strong material so that people understand that you weren't just working on that one script for 10 years and that's all you've got. If you're a writer, you're going to have multiple pieces of material anyway. So that second piece is something that's you're going to have along with the first. I guarantee you your agent is going to ask you, you know, if you query an agent or you meet some agent at an event, they're going to ask you for 2 pieces of material. So you must have those 2. Once you have gotten an agent, you're going to have a third piece of material that's going to keep the doors open. You will be surprised at how quickly you burn through material. I like to give my manager a new piece of material every 6 months, if not less than that. So I'm constantly trying to give him something that he can then send out, because when he first sends out your first piece of material to buyers, they're going to read it and they're going to say, hey, we need to see that second piece. So let's just say that that's already happened. Then when staffing comes up, when there's another opportunity that comes up, they will have already read those first pieces of material, and you want something fresh for them to be able to respond to. So that third piece is very important. Now, here's where it gets interesting. You can also use other kinds of material in your arsenal. You should have, certainly, you can have a short story. I've had work come to me off of a short story, off of a short film, off of sketches. And that's really if you're going to be in the late night space for sure, or if there's going to be a sketch show, or if you need something for an SNL packet, sketches have to be very, very, they have to be contemporary, they have to be really topical, so you'll have to have that completely refreshed often. But you can use a play. Nowadays, you can use an audio drama or a podcast if they're narrative. But all of those things can be used to round out your portfolio. I, for one, I know that I actually had done some, I guess I call it blogs on Facebook. And I had been for a few years writing up the stories of how I had gotten rid of my car. This is back in 2015. And I was just taking public transportation, which of course in Los Angeles, everyone thinks that's crazy. It's not so crazy in New York, but it's very odd for somebody to do out here in Los Angeles. And I had been blogging about all the people that I met as I went through my day. And I didn't realize that it was going to amount to anything. And yet, when I was applying for Sundance and the Episodic Lab, I got a call from a friend who said, hey, I just spoke to the woman who's doing who's doing all the reading for Sundance. And I told her about the fact that you've been writing these blogs on Facebook. She said she wants to read them. So I, of course, culled them through, all those years of my Facebook posts, and I put them together in a packet and sent them off. And I am absolutely positive that had a lot to do with me getting in. So you just never know. All of the stuff that you have written, that you've stored away, that can be useful. I've definitely gotten meetings off of a short film script that strangely enough is not a comedy. So when I was my manager was putting me up for this drama show that I was just doing, I didn't have a drama spec. I wish I had, but I didn't have a drama spec at the time, and he sent the short film, and it's only about 8 pages, and it's gotten me in a lot of rooms. So you can be flexible with what you send. just remember that everything that you're creating is potentially something that can be used within your arsenal. I've even seen people who use graphic novels. So if you have one of those, that's also very valuable. The last piece of material that I'm going to say you should probably have is a spec script of an existing show. And by spec script, I mean something that is, we use that spec in very different ways from the film and the TV side. So in this respect, it just means an example of a show that is already on the air. So if you are, and this is not necessarily something that everybody has to use, but if you're using it to get into a program, some of the programs still do require spec scripts. So as I said before, I had done an Atlanta. In the past, I had written a Scandal. You can basically write anything that is a sample version of a show that's already existing. You should probably pick a show that is currently on the air, maybe in its second season, so that you know that people have seen it. Any of the showrunners or the executives who are reading have to have seen the show. So it can't be something that's so obscure that no one will know what it is. They just won't read it. But have that last piece of material, I guess that would be your fourth or fifth piece of material. You may want to have a spec. If it's a doctor show, it might be The Good Doctor. It might be something that's on the air right now. It might be the Umbrella Academy if you like sci-fi. But whatever it is, you may want to have that also in your arsenal just to make sure. All right, what's next? Okay, so you've heard the term, it takes 10,000 hours of doing anything in order to master the subject, whether it's playing soccer or I don't know, playing dominoes, whatever it is. You need 10,000 hours to really master whatever it is that you're trying to do. Well, it's the same thing in writing. It's about 10,000 pages. Maybe that's a bit of hyperbole, but you are going to have to be writing constantly. So just keep going. I like to say to write a poem if you're feeling blocked. Write anything. Write your laundry list of groceries that you want to pick up, but just keep writing, because you're going to be better tomorrow than you are today. You're going to be much better a year from now than you are today. So just keep going and realize that this is a process. This is the long game. This is not something you're not gonna sort of wake up and go, aha, I've just become the best writer I've ever wanted to be. It's gonna take a minute. So cut yourself some slack. All right, let's talk now about crafting your personal narrative. So I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna quickly go to this next slide and then we're gonna pop right back. This is the slide that we're gonna be talking about, where it's this little oval with the little spokes. There's 7 spokes. So this is one technique that I used in the HBO Access program, where we helped the writers create a monologue essentially, but it's really a narrative about their life, so that when they go in for a meeting with a showrunner or an executive or producer, that they have a very, very comprehensive, non-rambling story to tell. And what this piece here is 7 little spokes around, and for every one of those spokes, you're going to put an event in your life that has created the writer that you are today. You're going to start off at the top left with your birthplace. Now, the reason for this is that when you're talking to anybody in Hollywood and they're asking you to tell them about, they're going to say, hey, tell me about yourself. They're looking for ways to connect with you. And this is what's going to help you connect with them, but it's also going to be a chance for you to tell them, this is who you are, and this is why you're so exciting and interesting. And it's also going to sort of help them see the story that you bring. But that first little tab is going to be for your birthplace, because no matter what, when they say, hey, tell me about yourself, they're going to want to know where you were born. I happen to be born in Florida. I was born near a military base and near Pensacola. So if somebody also had a parent who either live there or work there or have relatives there, that's an instant connection between the two of us. And we're looking for those ways of connecting the dots between our lives. So start with your birthplace. And then your second little tab is probably going to be in your early childhood, maybe around 13. That seems to be a very seminal time for everybody in their lives. It's obviously when bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs happen. It's time when the rites of passage happen in most cultures. So it's a chance for you to sort of put that thing that happened at around 13, which is also around the time that you realized that you were different from somebody else, where you and your friends sort of started to go your separate ways. You might have exhibited your writing skills. They might have exhibited their, sports skills. But at 13, something usually around that time has happened to you that sort of made you realize, hey, I want to be a writer. Now that there's some give and take with that. It may be a little bit earlier, maybe a little bit later. You may have had some sort of tragedy in your life where there's something that happened. You may have had a move from point A to point B. Whatever it is, somewhere in your young adulthood, that's going to be something that you're going to want to talk about. The other one that I think is really important, and again, these are your tabs and you can utilize them the way that you want. There's no rules and you can change them at any time. But if you went to college, put your college, whatever happened, whatever college you went to, because again, whoever's talking to you is going to want to know, well, where did you go? Where did you go to college? And if you didn't go to college, you can certainly use that as well. Hey, I didn't go to college. This is what I was doing at the time. But again, it gives them a chance to go, oh, yeah, I went to that college, or I know somebody from there, or yeah, I lived in that city. And then the other little spokes around there it's just for you. You just decide. And again, as I said, there's no right and wrong. But there is a rule. And the rule is you are not supposed to be writing words on this page. All of this is supposed to be drawn. So I want you to just do little icons, whatever that little icon is for each one of these little tabs. And the reason we do icons as opposed to words is that it helps you remember a little bit better than writing words. We're writers, we write all the time. Words are constantly in our psyche. But when you put something in it and you use that other part of your brain and you draw it, it will stick a little bit easier for you. So, so when you're done with all of those, you've figured out what all those tabs are for you. And for me, I had Florida was one. I have one where it's an open bottle with some bubbles because I had an alcoholic stepdad. It was a really important part of my formative years. I went to college at Vassar, so I do a little VC, and then I put some other things. I do a broken heart for when I got divorced, which was really the thing that helped me really become the writer that I am, because it gave me permission really to come out of my shell as a writer for the first time. So I talk a lot about that in my personal narrative, and people seem to lean in. And then in the center, what you want to do with all that white space in the middle is you want to put your goal as a writer. And I like to say that that's an important piece, because they're always going to ask you, where do you see yourself? Well, what do you see yourself doing? Or where do you, they're looking to, how do I help you, essentially? And so if you want to work in a writer's room, then draw a table with, some stick figures around it as a writer's room. If you want to be a showrunner, find an icon that makes it look like that. If you want to be a feature writer, maybe it's a feature screenplay. Whatever you want to do, they're going to ask you, where do you see yourself? And you want to have a really good answer. So put that in there as well. Now, here's a really important step, which is you now need to practice your personal narrative with a friend. Practice it with somebody who is trusted, who is going to be supportive of what you are saying to them. What you say may be very personal, and you have to decide what those boundaries are. If you want to have a conversation with somebody and reveal some very personal parts of yourself, that's up to you. You don't have to. This is your story. But you might want to, particularly if you're having a conversation with a showrunner. You may want to be able to say, hey, I went through this experience, or I'm still going through an experience, but that's going to be up to you. You have to decide what your boundaries are for yourself. And like I said, again, all of this is paper. It's just, you can change it at any time. You can create and craft whoever you want to be on this piece of paper. I ask that you just be authentic. But practice with a friend. When this friend listens to your piece, and it shouldn't be any more than, I'm going to say 7 minutes, 7-8 minutes. You want to keep it pretty short. Maybe it's 10. But those meetings are going to be, you don't want to overshare. So be careful about how long this is going to be. But when your friend hears your story, ask them to highlight for you, where did they lean in? What did they want to hear more about? Was there a point where they got choked up or you got choked up? Those little pressure points, those little important little moments are sometimes where a lot of gold can happen. That means that it's something that's very touching to you, and then that's going to make a good story. And again, you decide how much of that you want to share. And then also have them listen for what the theme is. And I think this is something that as you're telling your story, you may also just sort of hit upon yourself. But there's sometimes a theme that comes through, and it might be something like resilience. Sometimes it's whatever that thing is. It might be family, but usually there's a thread of when you tell your story, something very, very particular comes out of it. And when you use those things as a way to tell your story, sometimes it really helps to encapsulate it really, really well. So that's a really great assignment for you. Again, that little personal narrative grid, I don't know what you call it, graphic, is also going to be in your handouts. And okay, let's talk a little bit about getting around roadblocks, which I think quite a few people, this industry can be very unforgiving at times. It can seem very difficult to break through, to break in. And we have to use everything at our disposal. But I do feel as though sometimes we are so intent on going from point A to point B in the very traditional route that we forget that there's all this other good stuff that happens around the edges, and we sort of ignore them. So this is sort of something to keep you, maybe get you a little bit, get your juices flowing around some other ways that you might be able to gain some attention from reps. Obviously IP. So IP has become huge in the last 10 to 15 years. I think even more so than it was when I was coming up. For sure, we weren't really that interested in developing for books or from other, from articles or other things like that. It's exploded recently. But one way to get noticed and one way to get in the door to meeting with executives or selling your idea to producers is the IP route. And IP can be anything from a graphic novel. It could be some sort of play. It could be audiobooks or podcasts. It could be a short film, but whatever it is, that it could be a short story. It could be novellas. Those novellas have been exploding online lately too. So if you don't want to write a whole novel, write a novella. But IP can be some way, if you option IP or you create your own IP, that can be something where you obviously already have a calling card, and you can say, hey, I've got something that's based on IP. I have this IP myself. Maybe somebody will come to you to option that IP, and bam, you're in the door. There are other ways to showcase yourself, again, that I don't think that people often think about, which is theater. Now, usually when we're thinking about making it in Hollywood, it's TV and film, right? It's pretty straightforward, but that requires someone then to hire you to do the thing, as opposed to theater, which you can do the thing on your own. There are so many ways that you can put up your piece of material. You can do readings, so you can get together a couple of actors and have them do a reading. You can do it on on Zoom, which I've seen done, and then take that link, and there's a piece of your, there's a piece of your work that people can actually see. You could do it at a theater, obviously. I think people are starting to go back to theaters these days. And it takes really not that much in order to put up a piece of theater at your local non-equity playhouse. So think about that. Obviously, you can go to competitions, which are a fantastic way of getting noticed. These days, there's so many things like Coverfly and the Blacklist, and you can put your work up in a lot of different things. The Final Draft has the Big Break competition. There's just hundreds and hundreds of amazing competitions out there that all showcase your work. I just saw something on Twitter where it was the announcement of the semifinalists for the Nichols Fellowship. And I'd been a semifinalist a couple of years ago, I guess it's 2020, 2019. And the slew of agents and managers that came out of the woodwork just because your name is listed on a semifinalist roster for one of these things is amazing. So they will come for you and they will look for you if you have if you've made it to a certain level on a particular platform. There's festivals for sure. So some festivals these days have script writing competitions. They obviously have short film competitions. You can put up your pilot if you have done a pilot, but definitely use the festival circuit. In addition to the festival circuit, I would also say there are theaters who have competitions, like I believe it's the Humana Festival. There are a bunch of different kinds of festivals around the country who take in Humanitas as well, who take in material and also will elevate your status, and it gives you something to be able to talk about and to showcase when you are out there in the marketplace. And then of course programs, which I think we've talked a little bit about before. Now here's the thing about those programs too, and I think we might have a slide later, and if we don't, then we'll double back to it as well. But there are so many different programs. I think every major network and studio has a program. They're all intertwined in that those people who run those programs know each other. So when you get to a certain level in one program, it's very easy to get known by the others. There was a time when I was running the HBO Access program, every single year, one of the other program creators got together all of the fellows from that year and had a chance to connect the dots, not only with each of the fellows getting to know each other, but also for us getting to know those fellows. So a lot of those things, that's I think the reason that there's so much lift is that you have multiple people out there looking out for you at the same time. And then just make something. It sounds easy, right? For me to say, make a short, make a web series or whatever, but don't forget, Issa Rae made Awkward Black Girl that turned into Insecure. Lena Dunham made Tiny Furniture. So you can make something. It's really easy to make a podcast. It just takes a lot of time to keep it going, but make something. And like I said before, you can put up a play, you can have somebody, you can have some actors read your play out loud and then just film it, and then you've got something that you can showcase. So think about other ways of not just going through the traditional routes, which can sometimes be frustrating, but think about other ways of getting noticed. I actually just was reading Carrie Leiser's memoir that she wrote, and I actually met her through a reading that she did. I think it was, I want to say it might have been the Writers Guild, but she put up a reading, and when I was, I think probably at Fox, and that's how I met her. She's since gone on to make, The New Adventures of Old Christine and quite a few other amazing shows. So don't think inside the box, think outside the box. Okay, so here are the programs. Here is the slide. This is the deeper dive into the programs, fellowships, and competitions. So some of the important things about that you need to know is that, first of all, there's a ton of them. You need to make sure that you're looking at which are the ones that are going to give you the lift that you were looking for. So just getting into any program may or may not help you with your goal. That's why, again, when you have your mission statement and you do the work, figure out what you want out of all of this. It doesn't necessarily do any good to put all your money into a lot of competitions if you're not getting the great feedback that you're looking for. You might need to step back and do some work on your material. But when you are applying to these things, do your research. So find out what the prize is. So what are those things that they're giving? Are they giving you access to other writers and executives and showrunners? Are they making introductions for you? Are they giving you money so that you can make your film? Make sure that you know what your prize is so that you can, it might just be, the development of a particular piece of material, but make sure that you know what you're going for. You want to know who are the alumni. So what have they done? Are they going on to great things or are they not? So put your money where and your time into the things where there's going to be a reward at the end of it. Okay, so can you use that win as a calling card? So that's important information. Are you able to take that and push it into leveling up your career? Look for look outside the usual suspects. So again, you may think that going for all of the big network and studios are going to really help you. But if again you're not getting into those, look around and see if there are other programs, festivals, and competitions that might be just as interesting, that might be getting people plucked from those ranks and into jobs that you might want. So make sure that you're looking around the periphery and not just at the same, the usual top 10. And look at what they are looking for. So when you are going to be applying to this, make sure that you're fitting that bill. Make sure that you are somebody who, if you're applying to something and you're not the demo that they're looking for, maybe look for something where you are, because those fellowships are usually very, very eager to get hip to whoever is out there, and they want to know you. The whole reason for all of this is because we in Hollywood need new blood. We need to be the person who finds that new fantastic writer or director. So you making yourself available to them is only going to help both of us. So give them what they want. So almost every one of these things asks for a strong log line. And quite honestly, I've seen quite a few terrible log lines. So know that your log line should have a hero, a goal, and an obstacle. And if they run on and they're longer than a sentence, maybe sometimes two, you have to do two. But if they're run-ons, then you haven't figured out what your show is. So you have to be able to encapsulate what your series is in a very, very short, pithy hero, goal, obstacle kind of construct. Your first 5 to 10 pages are critical. Now, I'm sure you've heard this before because people like to talk about this all the time. But here's what's so important about those first 5 to 10 pages. It tells someone everything they need to know about you as a writer. Are you confident on the page? How do you use your description and your slug lines? Do you overwrite? Do you not? Is there something exciting in those first 5 pages? Am I learning something interesting? Is there a twist? But they really want to know how you are as a writer, what kinds of things you gravitate towards, obviously, in terms of the kinds of material that you like to write, but more importantly, it's how you put your words on the page. So make sure that those first 5 to 10 pages are as good as they can be. Obviously, your whole script should be good, but those first 5 to 10 pages are usually what I know that for at Sundance, they only asked for the first 5 pages and then they requested the full script. So those first 5 pages should be great. When you're answering your essay questions, make sure to answer the question. I can't tell you how many times people have not answered the question, or have thought they've been clever, or they've given me so little information where they just answer only the question, but they don't really elaborate. So, there's a nice happy medium. Give a nice, nice juicy paragraph when you're answering that question, but make sure that you are answering the question that's being asked. Follow obviously the format. I think that's a given, right? You should definitely be able to read the instructions and follow the instructions. Apply on time. there are many places that refuse to allow you to late entry. You know, every now and again, I think in the beginning of the Access program, I certainly was a little bit more lenient on that, but it gets to the point where it just becomes, you know, if you don't know how to make the deadline, you're probably not going to make the deadline within the program itself. So just apply on time. I put comedy here because quite often I hear from a lot of programs that they are low on comedy. So if you're a comedy writer, make sure you're applying to these things, because it's something that we get so few comedy entrants, that, you know, we want to make sure that if you are interested in that area, that you're getting into the mix. I think drama has taken over the industry in the last few years. So if you're a comedy person, make sure that you're applying to things, because there's a deficit right now. And have a really great bio and headshot. And again, it's one of those things that I feel like people forget all the time. But when you're going to get into a program, very typically, when you get in, you know, you need to have a bio and headshot. That's just you know, sometimes even to apply, but you should have one. You should have one that's really good, not something that someone just sort of snapped, you know, a candid while you were at a picnic. Make sure it looks professional. The other thing is that sometimes it does help for someone to vouch for you. Now, not all programs allow that, but sometimes, you know, if someone can put in a good word for you, they can take a look out and keep an eye out for your material if it makes it up to a certain level. So if you know someone who knows somebody who's doing one of these programs, just give them a little bit of a hint. And if you don't get in, try applying again with new material. So don't keep resending the same piece of material. Again, you want to have multiple things in your arsenal. Apply with something new. Okay, we got a couple more slides, so I'm going to just power through some of these because I know we're short on time. So taking a great meeting, we talked a little bit about this before, but here are some things to remember. Relax. People are there, they want you. The reason that you're in the room is because they already like your material, so you can relax about that. Remember that you're not there to sell a project, you're there to establish a relationship. Obviously, coming in for a pitch, you are there to do both, but really the more important thing is that this is going to be the long game. And if you sell it, great. If you don't sell it, no harm, no foul. This is going to be a relationship that's going to last quite a long time. So remember that you can take the anxiety down to a low roar, because you're there to really create a relationship, and that's going to go back again to your personal narrative and the conversations that you have about you. Be authentic, obviously, you know, don't pretend you're somebody that you're not. Pass the crazy check. So people are looking to make sure that you are somebody that they can pass along to someone else. So if you overtalk, if you exhibit, how do I say this nicely? How you exhibit crazy-like tendencies, try to keep those in check. Do your research. Obviously know that when you are showing up, you need to know who you are showing up to meet. So make sure that you've taken a look at what their credits are, what they're doing. Make sure that you know what company that you're going into. So don't mention an ABC show when you're talking to CBS. Ask questions. So they're going to always ask you if you have a question. They will ask you every single time, got any questions for us? And just have one in your back pocket. And I like to say, one of the ones that I like to say that I like to keep is, hey, is there anything, you know, what's the project that you're really excited about working on right now? You know, what do you have in development with that you really love? So that's always a really good go-to. And then follow up, and that's critical. So a lot of times, you know, we are moving at such a very, very fast clip as executives that we don't necessarily always follow up with you. But if you're constantly on our radar, every now and again, if something happens, ping us and let us know. If you put your play up, let us know. You know, if you've placed in a competition, let us know. It'll keep you top of mind, but just follow up. You are going to be in this business for 40 years. Everybody that's you're coming into the business with right now, you're going to know for the next 40 years of your life. That's just a given. Everybody that I started with, everyone that I started with, I'm still talking to. So remember that these are relationships that you're building for your entire career. That's why when I say when you go into a meeting, you're not there to sell, you're there to build a relationship, because I guarantee you, if you don't sell it today, you're going to sell it to them sometime in the future. Okay, your network. So obviously, the way that you're going to find reps is a number of ways. One of them, which is going to be your network. You're going to find them through your writers group. Someone from your writers group is going to be repped and going to say, hey, I think you should meet my manager. You're going to take a course at UCLA, NYU, I don't know where it's going to be somewhere. You'll take a course and someone in that course is going to recommend you. It might be even your professor. You're going to meet people at mixers. You might even meet your reps at mixers. Your reps are looking for you on social media, so have a Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and website account. Just make sure that you are existing within the world. It's a little bit of a red flag when you have no profile. I get a little squeamish when someone just doesn't appear anywhere or have a website or anything. It just is a little bizarre. So this day and age, you got to have some sort of presence, even if it's just posting once a month so that people know that you're alive. Go to conferences, festivals, events, orgs. You know, there are great ways to meet people by volunteering. If you're volunteering at that front desk, you're meeting everybody who checks in. You are also meeting all the other people who are there, who are all in the industry in some respect, and they will all be contacts that you will have for the rest of your life. And if specifically, if you are somebody who is a little bit more nervous about getting out there and networking, volunteering is a great way to do it so that you sort of have cover. You can be a volunteer and have a function. You're taking tickets, or you're seating people, or you are organizing the screenings, or you are giving away the swag, which of course everybody loves. So any of those things are activities that help you make an introduction organically. So utilize those opportunities. And then again, follow up. It does no good for you to meet somebody if you're never going to talk to them again. So make sure that you follow up. Okay, so here are the 3 things to start today, and these go to your handouts. So I've got here at the bottom right-hand corner your mission statement worksheet. This is what it looks like. It's in your handouts on your in your control thing. I don't know what you call it, off to the side, but they're PDFs. You can also utilize the personal narrative worksheet, so you see what that little grid looks like. And then there's a networking worksheet, and this is something that I've created for myself. I use this all the time. You can use whatever system you'd like to use. This is not anything this is just my personal one so that you can see what I do. But I put somebody's first, it's just an Excel spreadsheet, first name, last name, title, company, so that I know where they are. Sometimes things change, so you want to make sure that you're updating it. Phone number and their email. I like to put the date that I reached out, the result, and then there's a second follow-up. Again, I want to make sure that I'm constantly connecting with these people and it's not just a one-off. And then the reason that it's blued out, it's shaded under Shonda Rhimes. I do that because then it tells me that I've done this thing, whatever that thing is, recently, and I can and as soon as I've done one thing at least on the whole, on that line to reach out to that person, and if I've done all of those things and they all got shaded, then I know that I can then unshade the whole document and start all over again. So I just like to do it because it's a visual way for me to see whether or not I've made contact with someone and who I haven't made contact with, and then I look at why I haven't reached out to that person. And sometimes there's reasons. Sometimes they're in transition at a job. Sometimes it's just not the right time. I'm waiting for a movie of theirs to come out so that I can then ping them about how great their movie is. But it helps you, it helps me actually just take a look at visually, how much more do I have to do before the end of the year so that I'm touching and reconnecting with a particular contact. So let's put it all together. This is the last slide here, then we'll go to Q&A. So again, we talked about your lane and why it was important to have a lane. in the beginning of your career. We did talk about your arsenal and the pieces of material that you have, your 3 must-have pieces, but then your additional pieces that you can use to fill it out. We talked about your mission statement and how important it is for you to know who you are as a writer, and your personal narrative, how you're going to communicate yourself to whoever you're talking to. We talked about your network and how important that is for you to build that up, because your connections are going to be looking out for you to get that rep. We also need to, we talked about your social media strategy, because your rep is going to be looking for you in a lot of different places. Your location, we did not talk about on this call, but I would say about your location is that you could do this from anywhere. So people everywhere, now that we're in this virtual world, are getting staffed from many different places. I have a friend who's in New York who's staffed on a show that writes in LA. So you have the flexibility of being just about anywhere, and to build up your persona and your profile from overseas or from here. There's a lot of opportunities everywhere you go. There's the borders no longer exist. Bio and headshot are critical to have. Make sure that they are professional and that they are updated. And then just make sure that you know what your goal is. Keep that front and center in your mind, because again, getting swayed off topic is only going to be a time waster, and you want to make sure that you're going in the right direction. And that's I'm going to stop showing screen. There you go.
That was amazing. Thank you so much. That was such a great information, tips, insights. Can't wait to do that diaphragm as well. This is, so you guys, in handouts, in the tab on your control panel, you're able to find this downloads that Kelly gave us. Those great handouts are in your tab, in your control panel. So make sure you download those and start working on those. And I just want to remind everyone that this webinar was recorded, so if you missed anything, don't worry, we'll be processing this video and you can find the replay in your Stage32 account in about 48 hours. And we will be moving to the Q&A part of the webinar, and I just want to quickly remind you how to participate. Please look at the control panel that is up on your screen and locate the blue bar that says questions. Pop out that box and you'll see what looks like a chat box where you will be able to type in your questions. Please have in mind, we might not be able to go over all of the questions today, but we created a lounge on Stage32 for this webinar where you can continue this conversation, share your thoughts, and network, which is the beauty of Stage32. So I'm adding the link on the chat right now, and here it goes. And we hope to see you there after the webinar is finished. All right, I'm excited to start the Q&A sessions. I have great questions that came during your presentation, Kelly, so let me start with those. All right, I actually saw this question a lot when you were talking about branding yourself. So these writers are asking about going between 2 genres. Is that okay, or are you firm there should be only one at the beginning of your career?
I think it's okay to I think that it's fine to have a variety. And I will say it this way. When you are, like, let's just say you're a drama writer, and so all of your scripts are, hour longs. It's okay to bounce in between genres for that. So if one of your hours is a procedural and one is a family drama, you'd want to have a little bit of variety, because your opportunities that are to come to you aren't always going to be in that particular genre. What I mean in terms of lane is, you don't necessarily want to have a half-hour comedy and a dark drama, like a light half hour and a dark drama. Then those things aren't really connecting. But if they are connecting, if it's, you're just in the 1 hour lane, and maybe your 1 hour scripts are sort of, are a little bit different from one another. That's fine. You just don't want to confuse people too much.
Absolutely. That's great advice. And Matthew have a question about the 3 pieces of material you were recommended. They're saying, can they be a mix of features and pilots in the same genre, or just pilot or just features?
They can certainly be features and pilots. I would say depends on what your goal is. So if you want to be a television writer, 2 of those pieces should be pilots. That 3rd piece can certainly be a feature. I think that conventional wisdom is that a lot of executives aren't that interested in reading a full feature. And I think there may be some truth to that, but I don't know if they're going to read the whole thing anyway. So I think you're probably good with at least 2 pilots and then a feature script.
Perfect. So I guess it will be the same if you're a feature writer, then you should have 2 features and maybe 1 pilot. Will that apply as well?
Or if you know that you just want to do features, then everything should be a feature. I think that there's a little bit more of a crossover, I think, from features to television, maybe in the beginning, than features. I think for the most part, I would personally counsel, if you are a feature and you're only a feature writer, then probably all your material probably should be features. But I think, again, it's flexibility. I think if your piece of material is what it is, and that thing is whatever it is a different kind of, like, I would say maybe even a play would work for a feature sample. But you should, if you're going to be a feature writer, you should have a crap load more than just 2 features in your wheelhouse.
Yes, that's great advice. And Linda has a question about okay, so along this TV writing and the difference with features and writing for TV or for film, they're saying, what about a spec script for a movie? Is that something that it's industry related, or it's just for TV writing?
Well, remember when we talked about spec really just means speculative, and that just means work that's done for free. And essentially everything is done for free that we're writing at this point anyway. So it's not like don't get caught up on the term spec. We just use the term spec on the TV side to mean something that is a sample of another already existing show. On the feature side, everything that you write without getting paid for it is going to be speculative. It's going to be spec. So make sure that whatever you're doing is just, you're going to have to, especially on the feature side these days, everybody's asking for a full script. It's hard to sell a pitch these days unless you're, big kahuna. So, but they are buying finished screenplays.
Okay, so this is a term that does apply for TV and also for film.
Yeah, just in different ways.
All right. Okay, so Lavi has a question. As an industry insider, how do you feel about the word dramedy?
I don't mind the word dramedy. It's interesting because it used to be, I'm going to say, you guys remember, probably nobody on this call remembers, there was a show called Picket Fences that was a dramedy years ago, and everybody had this, like, they were excited because it was a sort of a form that nobody was really doing, but it also failed miserably. So people weren't really that, in retrospect, I think it was not necessarily the best way to categorize a show that was, both comedic and dramatic at the same time. I would, though, say The Girls is a dramedy. I wouldn't say it's a full-on comedy. I think there's plenty of things, and I think the format now with streaming, we've sort of, dramedy is very well baked into our DNA now, and I don't mind it whatsoever. So I think it's better to say it's a light 1 hour, maybe, and that way, or it's a darker half hour. So, but I don't think anybody is going to get too worked up over the term dramedy. I think it's fine to use.
Hey, yes, and dramedies are very popular these days. Yeah, but it's definitely that line, but it's not quite such a comedy. It's not quite drama, so it's that's the perfect concept, dramedy.
Right,
That's
right.
what I like. Amazing. So this question I also saw a lot. They're asking for tips to write a bio.
Ooh, um, let's see, a bio. Well, when you're writing a bio for your writing career, you might have a bio for, hey, you're a doctor or you're a lawyer, and your bio might be a little bit more technical. But for writing, it's really about your writing career. So I would add anything that you think tells a story of how much you love content. So if you maybe even if the way that my bio starts off is that I transitioned from being an executive into being a writer, and I talk about the shows that I was developing as an executive, but then also the shows that I'm connected to and the book that I wrote. And I always end just like a resume and with your education. So I got my BA at Vassar, I got my MFA at Emerson, and these are the extracurriculars that I've also, the boards that I've been on and all that sort of stuff. So I usually do it in 3 sections. And the first one is, what are you doing today? Then maybe your history of how you got here, and then your education, just like it is on your resume. Does that help? I hope that helps.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And
I keep
along,
it really short. I keep it
no, that's
uh,
perfect.
no more than like a third of a page, maybe at the max. I don't know that anybody wants to read a really long bio. And if you're putting your bio on one of these websites, you're going to apply to a competition or a program, they don't want a very long bio anyway. They don't want a page. They want to know exactly what you've done, the films that you've made, the plays that you've written, the awards that you've won, those kinds of things.
Yes, absolutely. You made a great point about the length of this bio. And will you organize it by like from your beginning to current things, or from
Yeah,
current
I
to,
do
yeah.
current to beginning. I do, here's what you need to know about me today, because I don't want to have to go through and look at everything to get to, oh, yeah, so he's writing, anthologies about, I don't know, whatever, space aliens. I want to know that that's where we start. And I also say it changes all the time. I update my bio constantly. I reword it constantly. I make sure that depending on who the audience is, I put certain things in there versus other things. So yeah, it's a living organism. So take care with it.
Yes, and along those lines, I saw this question also quite frequently. Please elaborate more on how our social media should look like, what not to do.
Our social media. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good one. What not to do. Okay, I learned this lesson recently, and I will pass along to you. So I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I have a Facebook personal and then page, and I have a website. And I'm constantly posting on all of those platforms regularly, even if I'm not necessarily engaged, a lot. So I might just take a link to something like an article and I'll repost it. I'll put a little something in there just to sort of keep it alive. But here's the lesson I learned. So I posted something on Facebook, and again, it was private, but it was Facebook, about a particular movie that I'd seen that I said, well, the whole movie's not that great, but the last 3 minutes are amazing. And a friend of mine called me up and he said, people look at you for, as I don't even remember what the words were, but he basically said, people look at your opinion, and your opinion matters. So make sure that you are not bashing someone else's work, and when when people are going to read that. And I said, I didn't think I was bashing her work. I said, I didn't love the movie as much as I loved this last 10 minutes. And he said, you need to look at how you're wording that, because what you say matters. And so I went back and I went, oh yeah, that's right. Every time I've gone out there and I've said, oh, I don't like this, it's a reflection, not just on the piece of material, but a reflection on me. I don't have to say anything. So you don't have to respond to everything. If you hate a particular show, you don't have to tell people. I think it only comes back to you negatively and not positively. So I say, back off, take a breath, go have a drink, tell your best friend that you might have hated the show. But people work really hard to make those shows as good or bad as they are. And your job is not to then go out there publicly, because again, it just sort of invites that negativity and the criticism and all of that. And so I've been very careful now about my social media to be positive and supportive. And if I don't understand something, I'll put, I don't understand it. Like I saw something recently, I was like, I don't understand that. But I almost immediately took it down because I thought, oh, the way that it reflects back on me is not necessarily how I want to present myself. So I would say be careful about who you are out there. Now, again, you could have something private for yourself, but we're talking about out there in the world that someone who is potentially going to hire you is going to see. So I would say that, but be consistent. You can pick a platform. You don't have to do all the platforms. I was promoting a book, so I was on everything. But pick a platform that you feel comfortable with. Twitter might not be your thing. It might be Instagram. I just forget to take pictures and upload them all the time. So my Instagram is always like, oh yeah, I should do that, and it's like 5 days later and I forget, and I post it. So it might be Instagram if that's the immediacy is something that you like. It might be LinkedIn if you like those kinds of connections. But have people, know that you are out there. It's also a great way to showcase if you are a comedy writer. There's so many people that I know that I've really connected with their comedy, and I go, oh, okay, I'm going to look out for that person. Oh, I want to see what that person's doing next. Oh, I'm going to reach out to that person. I saw a woman recently on her website. It was a YouTube thing, and she does all these characters, and I thought, this is great. She's amazing. And so I reached out to her on her website. So, it's people are taking note, and it's a great way to get found.
Yes, I love your advice. I mean, I remember my mom always said, if you don't have anything good to say, then don't say anything. Only open your mouth when you have something positive to say. Yeah, spread positivity. I love that. Perfect. So the next question is from Nathan. This question is funny. Are showrunners ever willing to look at writing samples that are based on IP that the writer doesn't own? He says, I did a genre writing exercise based on a book. It accidentally turned out well, and I'm unsure if I can do anything with it.
Okay, so the answer, the question is about IP, and if you don't own the IP, what do you have the ability to shop it?
I guess he's trying to use that as a writing sample, and he wanted to make sure, since he doesn't own the IP, I guess that will kind of fall into like a spec script if it is a writing sample. So he's like, are showrunners willing to look at that kind of writing sample?
Oh, I think if as a sample, I think you're okay. I think let's just say you're going to do a new take on something that's already existed, and you've got a brand new, gender bending twist on it. Yeah, you can certainly do that as a sample. You can't necessarily sell it because it's based on somebody else's stuff, and some programs won't necessarily take it. You have to be really careful about what you're applying for and what you're trying to do with it. I think a safer way to go is to find something that is in public domain. So if you look at public domain and it's anything, I think at this point it's like anything from 1923 and above, or something like that. It's at the near the turn of the century, that you then can, like, it's like Pride and Prejudice, like the guy who did there's that version of, was it was a Jane Austen book, and he redid it as it's on Hulu right now. He redid it as a Gay Men at Fire Island, and it was phenomenal. But it's based on something that's already in the public domain. So yeah, you can for sure use something like that. I just read something that was based on Pygmalion, so it's free game. But it is, I will say this though, the problem is, the tricky part is, if you wanted to do something with it, let's just say it caught fire and you wanted to do something with it, and you don't own the IP, and you don't have the rights or the ability to get the rights, then it is just a sample.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Selma has an interesting question. The question is, if I have made cold calls and have my script being read by producers, can I still place it in competitions, or is there a conflict?
Say that again. If she does have the what? The top part.
So she has her script being read by producers. Can she still place the script in competitions, or is there a conflict?
No. I think only sometimes there are competitions that say it can't have been optioned, it can't be in development, but yeah, that's your calling card, so you can do whatever you want with it.
Okay, and talking about those opportunities that are out there, and knowing that you were a fellow in the Sundance Episodic Lab, can you please share with us more about that experience, and what is the optimal time frame to apply to those opportunities in your experience?
Well, everyone has their own deadlines, so the only real indicator of when to apply is when you are really ready. So again, if you are getting feedback from your work and that maybe it needs more work, then maybe it's not the right time to apply. But once you feel like you're at a place where you are ready, yeah, I would pick the ones that you feel are really sort of in line with what your goals are, and go for it. My experience at Sundance was amazing. I loved every second of it. It was literally transformative. Is it literally? Figuratively transformative. It was amazing. So I got in 2019, and almost immediately I had a panic attack, because I thought, oh no, I'm an executive. People are going to know that I've been writing. It's going to be too public. I was freaked out. I just had a breakdown, and then I get into it. They announce. All of a sudden, people know. And when I got to Sundance, I want to say it's a 4-day session. And when I got off the plane in Utah, and they started to talk to me not as an executive and a panelist, but as a writer, I just felt different. I felt like I was in the right place, in the right skin. It felt completely different. And then the whole session was a deep dive into your creative stuff. I was lucky enough to have my project workshopped. They had, out of the, I want to say 9 writers, my script got workshopped along with 2 others, and it was a cathartic, emotional, just bloodletting of my material in a really, really phenomenal way. And it helped me really talk through the themes and sort of up the game quite a bit on that particular script, which ended up being my calling card out in the industry, and ended up getting me my manager. But the whole thing was just one big, 4 days of emotional, we were sobbing from the beginning to the end, and it was fantastic. And they do these things where they do a lot of exercises with you, and then at the end, that we even had a sound bath. So again, we're talking about being steeped in creativity, and then by the end, they sit down with you with a very, very targeted It's a very targeted process of trying to figure out, okay, who do you need to know and who do you need to get repped by, whose material is going to go to who. They are very, very, it's not all just, you know, kumbayas. It's let's get down to business and let's figure out, here are the 5 people you need to know. Here's how to pitch your script better. You know, they make you do 2 little practice runs where you pitch to two separate groups. And my God, it's nerve-wracking, but it's also a fantastic way of figuring out where you need to shore up your pitch. So it was great. It was great in all certain respects. It was, you know, very business, but it was also very creative. And I think I also did the same thing in my when I was doing the Access program. Our first day was, we just did the personal narratives, and those personal narratives left everybody in tears more often than not. There was a very, very emotionally wrenching part of you know, talking about yourself and your stuff, which is great. And then throughout the week, it was bringing in writers who could talk about the craft, and bringing in directors who could talk about the craft, and bringing in, you know, breaking down a lot of different aspects of the business, and bringing in agents and managers to talk about that piece of it as well. So it was just packed with writing and craft and the business.
Well, that sounds like an amazing experience. That sounds amazing. So for sure, you recommend everyone to apply to these opportunities, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think that this is a factor of it, the world that we now live in, which is really democratic in a way. There used to be so many gatekeepers, and those gatekeepers are now starting to crumble. Yes, there are some of the big agencies, but what they used to have such a stranglehold on who gets in and who didn't get in, and now you can get in so many different ways. You can get in through the programs and the festivals and the competitions, and just by meeting other people and by doing it yourself, and, you know, put your stuff up on Vimeo or whatever it was that, you know, High Maintenance was on Vimeo before it became a show. So you can find a way to break through. You just have to obviously do the work, which is the most important thing. And then once you've done the work, you have to make sure that you are connecting with people so that they know that you've done the work.
Yes, and I know you mentioned about the time frame to apply whenever you know you're getting good feedback and all of this. So let's say you are ready to apply, and I remember you mentioned about the timing when you apply. So what would you recommend? Apply at the beginning, at the middle, avoid the end, or what would be the best time to apply
I
to
don't
this?
think it matters. You mean in terms of the window, the opening of the window?
Mhm.
It doesn't really matter because your material will get read. You just have to do it before the window closes. You can't be that person who goes, "Oh, I missed the window. Can you let me in?" That's a big red flag. But if you've gotten in underneath the deadline, it doesn't really matter. There's usually an onslaught of material that comes in the last 24 hours. So other than that, it doesn't matter. It all
Perfect.
gets.
Yeah. Yeah. So we are approaching the end of the Q&A, but there's so many great questions. I'm gonna try to squeeze a couple quick ones. And this one is, if you can tell us, well, this one is a two-part question, but hopefully it's quick. What makes a script stand out for you, and do you have a favorite genre?
Oh, a favorite genre. Well, I think, you know, obviously for comedy is something that, if comedy done well, is a godsend. So I'm particular to probably a little bit more comedy than drama. I mean, I've spent my career in comedy, but I will tell you this, what's more important is your character. And I would say what stands out for me is if your lead character is really interesting and unique. So again, when I said, you know, you can basically tell in the first 5 pages if somebody's going to be somebody you want to follow. And I said too, it's about confidence. So when you've worked your craft, there's a certain confidence that you will exhibit on the page. so that I understand that you understand how this all goes. And you will have read a lot of material so that you have looked at the masters who have written, and you can see how they put things on the page. That's number one. So is it, overwritten? Is it underwritten? Is it funny if it's supposed to be a comedy? Is it dark and brooding and you've given me enough of that ambiance within the script? But really it comes down to character. That main character should be very, very interesting and should approach life and have a philosophy about life that is different from everybody else. So whatever your character is, make sure that they're really interesting, because then I'll want to read more.
Yes. Okay. I think we're gonna stop the Q&A here. However, I wanted to quickly read a few of the comments that were coming in after your presentation. So, everyone loved it. I see amazing, solid info. Thank you, bunches, from Jody. Just wanted to say that I read your book, listened to your book, and enjoyed your interview on Pete Chapman's podcast. I appreciate your inside knowledge. That's from Zach. This was very helpful. Thank you, Rebecca. So just wanted to share a few of the comments that are all loving you on the chat. So
thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, and before I let everyone go, I want to ask you to leave us with some parting words. What last piece of advice or thoughts do you have for everyone in the room?
Yes. Well, I think I already said one of them, which is you're going to be in this business for 40 years. And I had a conversation yesterday with a manager who we were laughing about that exact same thing. And we were saying, oh my God, I think I've known you since you were a child. Like, we were both probably 22 when we got into this business, and we're still talking to each other today. And we were in different places at the time, but we still have a relationship. So remember that it's a long game, and you will know everybody in this business at a certain point in your career. So that's number one. Number two, I think I probably say this quite a bit, but don't give up. If you can take anything from me, I started in 1980, maybe it was 1986 or so, working as a writer's assistant. And it took me 30 plus years to actually get paid to be a writer. And yes, I took a very circuitous route, but the entire time I was writing. So I was working on my craft the entire time. And really that's what this whole thing is. It's whether you want to write a novel, you want to write, pamphlets, it's about working your craft. I still read scripts all the time. I still study the works of other people. I still look at a script and then look at it on the screen, and I see how did that translate from the page to production. So just keep working at it, because it's a muscle that you will eventually learn to master. That's all this is. So keep going, because the only way to get better is to do it, and the only way to fail is to give up.
I love it. That's a great way to end the webinar on a high note. And thank you, everyone listening today. You are invited to continue this conversation on our lounge on Stage 32. The link is on the chat. Please also share what you learned today on social media, and don't forget to tag Stage 32 on Twitter and Instagram. We look forward to bringing you more webinars like this in the future. And with Stage 32, just want to thank you, Kelly, for giving your time and knowledge on such an important topic for our community. It was a pleasure, and have a wonderful day. See you all next time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary Angeli.